Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the 2022 war in Europe, and we're going to talk about emergent language around the war. All right, so what is emergent language? Emergent language is very important. So I used to love to say the real battlefield is language, right? And on February 23rd, that was 100% true. On February 24th, that was no longer true. The real battlefield is Europe. Because we really were like the real battlefield on February 23rd, 2022 was language, and we were fighting. We were fighting for dominance. We were fighting for all kinds of things globally. Different countries, and honestly, that's the kind of fighting you want. You want fighting over words, right? Because nobody has to pay the 10 prime price, right? Like that's what we want. That's that Maslow's pinnacle, right? We're in that Maslow's valley now. We all live in a world where February 23rd, we were worrying about art. February 24th, we were all worrying about shelter and food, right? Because nobody was sure if they could afford either one ever again, right? And we're still there, right? Like inflation is just zip, zippity, zip, zoop, zop, right to the top, right? Like it's pretty incredible. It's terrible, right? So, and again, it's this top zig, these thefts of Putin, Zelensky's important gifts world, right? Like the world has been reshaped by two men, right? Like, and now we know what villainy looks like, what modern villainy looks like, and we know what modern heroism looks like. Okay, all right. So let's talk about new emergent language, humanitarian corridors. That's the word of the day, the phrase of the day. Phrase of the day: humanitarian corridors. So I had never heard this term before February 24th, right? And now it's constantly discussed. Now, what is a humanitarian corridor? Well, what it's supposed to be is that a country that is invading another country, right, is going to say, hey, we're shelling you constantly, but we would like to save some face and pretend that our intent is not to destroy every human that lives in the space we're invading, right? And so we're going to agree on these humanitarian corridors, right? And this is a road to safety out of a besieged area, okay? It is a path. Often it's not even a road, right? It's a path that's agreed upon between the country under siege, the sieging country, right? And often like global entities, right? There are global like institutions that get involved in forming these humanitarian corridors. Now, what's terrifying is that once the humanitarian corridor is established, it should be respected. What I've seen, all right, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is what's been happening in Ukraine is Russia will agree on a humanitarian corridor, and Ukraine will agree on a humanitarian corridor, and at this point, I don't think Vladimir Putin has ordered anyone to be like, oh, hey, they agreed on the humanitarian corridor. Here's the targets, and why don't you just strike a bunch of people who are leaving the nation? That has not happened from everything I've heard. What has happened several times is people start moving down the humanitarian corridor, and then a mile ahead, bombshells hit literally on the path that they're going to be going across, right? So at this point, humanitarian corridor is an idea, right, that really doesn't seem to have actually manifested, right? And the reality is many Ukrainians are like, well, this is an agreed upon humanitarian corridor, but based on history, we don't really know if we can trust it, right? And that is if you have such a great term, right, humanitarian corridor, this should be super easy. Even a sieging country should be like, yeah, okay. Here's a road for your people to leave, right? The other thing that I had heard was on the news was it was the darkest trolling humanity has ever done, right? So one of the things is when they were originally setting up the humanitarian corridors, Russia actually proposed humanitarian corridors that led Ukrainians into Belarus and Russia. Like that's super dark trolling. Like that is like, it doesn't get worse than that. That's like, wow. Okay, like, it's not villainy because it's not actively harming somebody yet, but that is just the worst form of trolling I have ever seen anywhere. Like, and there's some dark trolling on on the internet, right? That's really bad. The other thing I think that's really sad is one of the things that is really incredibly sad to me is like people be like, oh, I think there was this little girl and she was like, she sang, "Let It Go" in Ukrainian, and it was a moment like literally millions of people watched, and like that girl, like there are news sources that are tracking where that girl is, and like she will be, people will talk about her 20 years from now. Like it's not going to just disappear, right? It was a national, global moment, right? And it was really fascinating because, they were saying, "Oh, thank goodness she was able to get out of Ukraine," and I'm like, wouldn't it? You're saying that's good, right? It's better, right? It's a better state. Like, well, I'm not sure it's even better, right? My issue is when someone flees their homeland. How is that good, right? Like, we're all saying, oh, thank goodness this happened. What, did she had to abandon her home? That she's got stuffed animals that have now been shelled? How is this good, right? I think what you could say is, I'm happy. I don't even know what to say, right? Like, and one of the reasons why I'm really struggling with this humanitarian corridor is this is the world saying this is an organized surrender, right? And I'm not sure we should be provisioning surrender, right? I'm not positive. I don't know. This is one of those ideas that's still forming in my head. But one of the reasons why it's still forming in my head is God bless the refugee, right? Quite literally. I pray that the refugee will be blessed, right? Because they go through so much and they're just really struggling in this time, right? But my heart and my mind are on these people who stayed. In Mariupol, you had this situation where it was under constant shelling. There were 300,000 people there, and many of those, it was men and women, right? And just the bravest souls. And what does it mean to stay, right? And one of the biggest things, too, is the redefinition of fighting, right? So the people who said, no, I'm not going down a humanitarian corridor. I'm not moving 1 inch from here. I have no ability to fight. I know I can't stop Vladimir Putin, right? But my fight is going to be to stay. I will never leave my homeland. And like we have this word for refugee, right? What word? We need a word for stayers, right? For these incredible recalcitrant heroes who are like, I will never budge from this land. And I also just feel like we need to take a shard out of their heart and put it in our heart. Like that is, this land I'm on, I will never leave it, right? That's what I'm telling myself, and that's what I intend. I've had some comments in the below, and they say, Scott, you say you're strong and brave. No, I do not say that at all. No one knows if they're strong or brave. You could take a U.S. Marine trained, right? When they hit that battlefield, they could run. And you could take a fortnight trained, U.S. New York carpenter, right? And put them on the battlefield, and they may shine brighter than any U.S. military trained soldier, right? They may rally troops, save lives. You don't know until you're there. I don't know if I'm strong and brave. I've never had anything that's tested it, right? But I am looking at these Ukrainians, and I'm saying, I want to be strong and brave. And that's the model. That's the model, right? The woman who sat in a movie theater, right, in the middle of Mariupol and said, I got my coffee cup. That's all I have to fight Vladimir Putin. This coffee cup and my presence. That is the boldest, strongest, bravest person I can think of. And that's who I want to be. And that's what I'm trying to set myself to. And the first part of that, the first part of the training is saying to yourself, I will never leave. I will never leave this land. They're going to have to take it. I will not leave. I will never use a humanitarian corridor. But the humanitarian corridor is an emergent language element, and it's quite fascinating. What are your thoughts on humanitarian corridors? What's your understanding? What can we do to make them safe, right? Should we even use them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.